All right, so Martin, it really is good to have you on and to talk more with you about your book, which I want to grab and hold up. It's substantial, so as you well know. So it's called Project Heaven on Earth. The three simple questions that will help you change the world easily. Um, so, what I do when I interview my guests, and as I told you, I have a podcast, and that I hope to put some of what we discuss into an interesting article. And one of the things I ask all my guests is I like to find out about our origin stories, as I call them. So, um, it's been said that the two most important days and dates are the day we were born and the day we found out why. And so in my case, I was born December 21st, 1943, in New York City. And the day I found out why was the day I held my newborn son in my arms and made a promise that I would be a different kind of father than my father was able to be for me, and to do everything I could to create a world where men were fully healed, engaged, and involved with their families throughout their lives. So I just put it back to you to tell us, if you're open to it, your date of birth and where you were born, and uh, for you, when you found out the why, your purpose that kind of has led the foundation for what you've done in the world.
Thank you, Jim. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is a steel city like Pittsburgh, um, March 7, 1947. And I remember I was about 12 years old, sitting on the front porch of my house, uh, reading newspapers. I would read at least one and maybe two newspapers a day. And I knew from that age that I was here to change the world. And
Mhm.
it wasn't a big deal. It was just, that's it. And I've always known that. That's it.
So what did that mean to you back then? I want to change the world. If I, one of your buddies back then, yeah, what are you talking about, Martin? What does that mean?
As I went through life, as I've gone through life, I've realized more and more that there is suffering in the world, which is untenable for me, which is stupid and which is ongoing and which is unnecessary. And that always, always bothered me deeply in my soul.
Hmm.
Um, and I was also interested in people's vision, what their soul, their divine soul, said about why they're here and what they're supposed to do in life. And I think the first major was I went to a yoga retreat. Oh, I was working for the federal government in Canada, and there was a show on TV at the time in the U.S. called America Tonight with Martin Mull, and it was an interview show, but it was phony, and he had, I mean, ridiculous guests on, but it was very, very funny. And I met a woman who was a comedy writer. She lived in northern Michigan, and she and her husband were members of this yoga retreat, Song of the Morning. And that was it. So I went to the yoga retreat. Have nothing to do with yoga. Not that I didn't care less, just nothing. I wanted to be with her and write. And I had an epiphany experience there. And I saw a pink neon sign in my mind's eye, and it said, the name of the game is Martin Rutte, and it can be played any way. And I never knew that. And that was like, oh, okay. And a couple of days later, I met this guy at the yoga retreat, Bob Branscombe, who was a former vice president of a hospital in Chicago. And he and his partner had written a course called Fundamentals in Lifestyle Management. And it was about setting goals beyond what you believed possible. And I'd never heard anything like that. Being responsible, committed, goals beyond what you believed possible. I'd never heard of such a thing. And I went to Chicago, took his training, and said, that's it. I'm taking this back to Canada. And that really started the whole process because I saw how the belief that we can only do so much, the belief that we can't change the world, is so endemic in humanity's culture, but yet there are people who say, no, I do not want to play that particular game. And so
Interesting.
I started meeting people
Uh-huh.
who were here to change the world because I wanted to be I wanted what I was thinking to be normalized, and so I would look for and find those people, and every time I found one, more encouragement, more encouragement, more encouragement.
Well, interesting. I got to tell you honestly, when I first saw the title of your book, I thought, oh, this is a bit airy-fairy for me. I mean, personally, I'm kind of a scientist. Have a PhD in psychology, and the second thing I thought was, in looking at the title, is, oh God, not another one of these, promise you everything, riches and everything you've always wanted with only three simple steps and it'll be easy. And I think what what at least got me into the book to go, well, maybe this is different. I saw that the foreword was by a colleague who I
Jack
know,
Canfield.
Jack Canfield, and that you had written another book about one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series that was serious and interesting. And uh, there was a quote, I believe, I think I've got this right, by Jack in the forward of the book, which kind of struck my attention. He wrote um, that the book, he was referring to your book, as a practical guidebook on how to actually create heaven on earth now. And Martin will show you a collection of different gateways for taking action, which he discovered by talking to thousands of people. So, talk a little bit more about your professional background, what you've done before you got to this book, and then how this book came to be with out of the other things you've done, and what it's teaching us about these simple things that can in fact change people's lives. Big
Right.
question, but
No, no.
I hope that could kind of get us started into, a serious look at your book.
So my background is a management consultant. I've worked in both Canada and the U.S. with large corporations, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Merrill Dow Consumer Pharmaceuticals, Southern California Edison, Apple Computer. I've spoken 4 times at the Harvard Business School about vision. So I have, I'm a co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul at Work, with sales I think over 1.1 million copies now, New York Times bestseller, business bestseller rather. So I have a very serious consulting background, and it seemed to me, oh, sorry, and I also was the first person in Canada that I know of that brought the issue of vision. People thought I was nuts when started talking about vision in the late 80s. What, are you smoking dope or something? I mean, now vision is nothing. I started one of the leaders in spirituality and work. I was the chair and co-founder of a Center for Spirituality in the Workplace at the Sobey School of Business at St. Mary's University in Halifax, the first of its kind in Canada. We had PhD students, we had undergraduate programs, we did lectures around the world via Zoom. So that's a very serious part of my life. And I was going to give a talk. So I was giving a talk on spirituality at a conference one day in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I was meditating beforehand, and I said, if every business in the world is spiritual, is that what you want? And I said, oh, no. If we could transform business, because business is the temporal power in the world, we could transform the world. And then this thought popped into my mind, oh, you mean heaven on earth? And I literally said, excuse the language, holy shit, you can't say that. And then I thought, but why not? I can talk to you about hells on earth, right? That's permissible. The wars, the economic turmoil, environment, blah, blah, blah. That is permissible conversations, but not heaven on earth, not our soul's dream for the kind of life and family and community and work and nation and world that we long for, and to begin making that real in the world. And I knew, Jed, when I heard that phrase, I knew that was the next phase of my life, clearly. And people at the beginning said, "You're nuts. That you're going to be thought of proselytizing. You're crazy. It's impossible." Blah blah. But in my soul, I knew I got to get in there. And so, and I'm not a big reader. I'm a big interactor. So I started asking people, "What's heaven on earth for you? What's heaven on earth for you?" Over and over and over, because I wanted to see, is there a lay of the land here? Are there answers or arenas that keep coming up over and over? And the answer is yes, they do. And that surprised me. There are seven gateways, seven major gateways that I've discovered that 99.9% of people fall into one or more of them. And so I knew I was onto something. I knew that this was massive. And at the beginning, as I said, people thought I was nuts. And now, 30-ish years later, with all the turmoil on the surface of culture, underneath what is arising is a desire to have this, what I call new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. And I'm saying, if you had a magic wand, what would you want? Wouldn't you want heaven on earth? And they go, yeah, I would actually. Good. Let's dive in there and discover. And again, Jed, I don't tell you, that's proselytizing. You tell you. Much more powerful. Much, much more powerful. So that's the process of getting here.
Mm. So I think the book's been out 7 years now or so, something like
Yeah.
that. Talk a little bit about what you've discovered in talking to, so many different people about what that means to them in their own experience and what they can do in their own lives. And if I understand, in reading the book, this started with some initial questions to a few people, but has spread to, literally thousands and thousands of people all over the world. So, what have you learned from talking to these various people that can kind of give us some sense of what people are telling you?
I want to go back and give you a little more context. So, what I discovered at the beginning was this fear, and I know I've said this before, but it's important in terms of the context of this answer.
Yeah,
The fear that I'm going to shove, I know what heaven on earth is, and you don't, down your throat.
yeah.
Once people realize, and we'll get into the questions in a minute or two, once people realize that's not what I'm going to do, I'm going to have them discover, or really what I say is the questions evoke the heaven on earth that's already present in you.
Mm.
Once that comes out, it's a whole different story. They get it. They just get it. And then they go to, okay, let me see how I can make my difference. Whatever the difference is, whatever you think or feel in your soul deeply, that the kind of impact you can make by the simplest of things, people go and do. Like one woman talks to two people a day. Excuse me, one woman smiles at two people a day in Mexico City. That's her thing. Another woman puts the three heaven and earth questions at the end of her email so people can answer it for themselves once and done. A real estate agent, we were talking about a suffering in the world, and she said, I'll tell you a suffering, homelessness. And I mean, she went white almost. You could see the deep, deep impact this suffering had on her. So what's heaven on earth for you? Well, simple, a home for everyone. But Martin, that's impossible. I work 80 hours a day, 10 days a week, blah, blah, blah. Good, what are you gonna do? Oh, she goes back to her agency, sits the people down, and says, we're gonna create a home for everyone. Easily. What I'm asking you to do is once you sell a home or a commercial building, you agree now to have $100 taken off your commission check. Everybody agreed. Last I spoke to her, they had raised $400,000. Yes. And she's in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. The Nova Scotia Real Estate Board has now taken that up as a promotion, and it's called a home for everyone.
That's super.
So the creativity, a police officer in in Lubbock, Texas, what's heaven on earth for you? The end of crime and people helping each other. And he wrote a 16-page manual called Heaven on Earth for Law Enforcement. So I can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
What gets me is how the questions unlock the creativity that's present in people about their direct contribution to actually
Exactly.
having heaven on earth. So I want to
So,
move it.
so say the three questions because they, again, when I read the title of the, oh, come on, but the questions, like all good questions, are simple, direct, and evocative. So if you could say what they are, I think it'll help people who are watching this get a sense of the answers that you've been getting.
What happened initially was I just went up to people and said, "What's heaven on earth for you?" And over the years, I began to develop this refinement into three powerful questions. Well, actually, can we do it? I'll ask you.
Sure.
All right, and then those, when you're watching or listening now, just pause the recording and answer each question for yourself. It'll make it much more powerful. So, question one, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on? Recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind when you had asked me that was I was getting ready for the birth of our first child, and in the hospital going through teaching my wife how to, breathe and the things we had learned in childbirthing classes, and then the actual event was the birth of my son and holding him in my arms for the first time. This is, back, 50 some odd years ago. I still, remember I made a promise to him that I would be a different kind of father than my father was able to be for me, and did everything I could to create a world where men and fathers were fully involved with their families in a way that my father was not, and so many other fathers have not been. And I just thought if we could do that for everybody, what a beautiful world we would have. So that was uh, my initial feeling of heaven on earth would be that for me.
I'm going to go through the three questions, then we'll go back and revisit the questions and I'll explain the strategy. Second question, Jed. Here's a magic wand, and with it you can have heaven on earth simply by waving it. Here's a magic wand, and simply by waving it, you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you?
Well, for me, it really involves, talk more about that in at least in our discussions, but it involves men and fathers and the way in which I think and have experienced if we could get fathers to be connected to themselves, to feel the kind of love and desire to connect with their children and generations to come of other children, that that would be heaven on earth. It would transform everything. And that's what, if I had the magic wand, I would hope that for everybody.
Let me try one little coaching. Can we redo that? And instead of saying the conditional, which is if and would, it's declarative. So heaven on earth for me is, and then declare what it is.
Yeah, it's every man, every father or every father figure would be
Not would.
engaged,
Is.
is engaged with, okay, guy, every father, every man, every father figure is engaged with his own children or other children that he cares about and loves them in a way uh, that I have loved my children and that I see loving fathers in and father figures loving their children.
Very clear. And then the third question, what simple, easy, concrete step, what simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours to have more of that?
For me, what the step that I would take and have taken would continue to take is to share my story, to share. what I have been doing and engage other men and their families. I talk to men every day and look for opportunities to share the story and ask other men what that would be for them.
Very clear. Let's go through the three questions. So, question one, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. And what you'll notice, Jed, is I did not define what I mean by heaven on earth. And yet you answered the question. 99.9% of people, when I ask that first question, just answer it, which
Mm,
continues to astound me because it says to me that there's an already knowing within you about what heaven on earth is, or you could not have answered the question. And so for you, the birth of my first child, holding my son in his arms, men and women, excuse me, men and fathers healing the world. So very clearly you knew what it is. And what I call it is it's your already knowing about what heaven on earth is. And that's what speaks. The second question, here's the magic wand, and with it you can have heaven on earth. What is heaven on earth? The reason for the magic wand is to remove the necessity of having to know how you're going to do it. If you don't have to know how, you go bang to the what. And you went right to the what. 99% of the people go right to the what. People know what heaven on earth is. It's astounding to me. I thought I'd have to explain or define, which I don't want to do anyway. But no, bang. Or if somebody asks me, well, what does it mean for you? No, 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 I don't answer that question. And then the third question, sorry, so what the second question answer was for you was every man and father is engaged to be connected to themselves and feel the love and share the love with themselves and other men. Very clear, I'm paraphrasing, very clear to you about what that is. No question. That's normal. And then the third question, what simple, easy, concrete steps will you take? Now, the reason for the third question is I don't want to just leave it at the second question. I want to have you directly engage in, oh, I get it. This is what heaven on earth is. Okay, okay. Now, here's a tiny little step that I will take in the next 24 hours to then put yourself in that boat, in that swimming pool of heaven on earth, and the momentum begins to increase and increase and increase. So that's the purpose of the three questions. And
yeah.
always we get to the same point. Always. That's what astounds me. It's normal. We can go into, what I've discovered in terms of the seven gateways, but I'm how long have I been doing this? 30, 35 years? I'm
Yeah.
so deeply moved by the answers people give.
Well, what I love about what you described and what we did, even here together and what others can do, it does the two things that I said I was skeptical about. It takes it out of the airy fairy world, is very practical, and it's not imposing your beliefs on other people. It's eliciting what it it is for each of us. And the other is that it isn't. It's simple, it's very simple. It's doable, but it's action oriented. It gets people into the doing and the visioning that allows, as you say, spectacular things to actually happen without this overview of it's got to be so huge I could never even begin. It gets people into action beginning. So, one of the things I like to just extend and ask you now and continue our discussion, which is for me, these things had to do with me and my work with men and my experience with my own father and my own son. And I know the way you and I were introduced was through one of the men in a new men's group that I've started. I'd been in a men's group that's been meeting for 46 years, where
Amazing.
we explore issues like these and deepen our own experience of being together and what we can do. And that group had ended as a number of the men had died, and I started a new kind of mentoring group. And a colleague, evidently, that you knew was in the group and talked to you. So my question to you is, there seems to be some synergy and overlap with at least our explorations with men and men's groups, and I was just interested to hear a little bit more about your own experience with men's groups, and maybe, what your interest might be, or your explorations in the area of sex and gender. Because first of all, I'll say that I don't think there's any way we can even talk about men without talking about women. So it's not a it's men and we don't have to talk about anybody else in the world. We inevitably are engaged in, relational kind of discussions. But I'd be interested more in your experience with men's groups.
I have been, or excuse me, when I lived in Toronto, I'm now in Prince Edward Island, Canada, and we've lived in the US for 22 years. I was in a men's group for, oh boy, 5 or 6 years, and I really liked it. And I wish that we had continued, or I've actually written, I don't know if you know the Mankind Project. I did that, which
I've been through the Mankind Project,
yes,
yeah.
I loved it because they were saying things that rang so deeply true to me about courage and moral courage and what being a true man was, not the BS of the best and not, killing other men, all that stuff. I have not had a lot of experience with men like that. And I loved it. I thought Mankind was, a gift to the world. And there's also a women's, I don't know what it's called, a women's corollary to that. Uh, and I just got your book 12 Rules, and I've started to read that, and that's just opened up a whole Pandora's box of good stuff. I mean, I see a lot of the issues with my distance from men because I could never. It's easy for me to be with a woman, and I assumed that men would be the same, but it's not. And so your book is like, oh, well, then what is a man? What is a man-to-man relationship? And I've been in a relationship, a telephone relationship with a guy in Boston for about 11 years. We talk once a week for an hour on Sunday morning about anything. And that's been extremely useful for both of us. So I'm looking to go deeper into that arena because I think for me, part of heaven on earth is men are in their fullness of masculinity, women are in their fullness of femininity. And I've always felt that when that occurs, the two come together in transcendence and this new spiritual blossoming will occur.
Well, that's been my experience for sure. And I'd be interested in if you will kind of maybe go a little deeper with this experience of having clearly talked to many, many men and many, many women. And
About heaven on earth, you mean?
yeah, about
Yep.
heaven on earth. And if you have reflected or could reflect on what may have been there, maybe that you weren't aware of at the time, but as you reflect on it or read some of my work or reflect on the Mankind Project, what may have been some different ways in which men as opposed to women, males as opposed to females, see the world both in terms of the hellish kind of things that that we all see and feel and experience, and the possibilities of what we might transform that. Do, do you notice any differences? Clearly, there's a lot of crossover between men and women, but any differences you see that are unique to
So far,
men?
yeah, so far, this is like, well, first of all, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah,
I've always looked at it as humans looking at
exactly.
one another. Okay, men, this is a tiny statement. Men find it easier to have a bigger picture. One of the guys who heard my talk on heaven on earth said, like, jumped up and said, "Ah, I got it. He's from Gabon, Africa. And he said, I've got it. Heaven on earth or excuse me, Africa is a heaven on earth continent. Whoa, that blew me away. And it was nothing for him, just obvious. Women, I remember a minister from Chicago once saying, from San Francisco once saying, Whitney Robertson, heaven on earth is the natural language of women. And that really impacted me. It was so, so beautiful. Women being concerned with relationship and the whole being looked after. So that's generally, as I thinking here about my answer to you, it's not a powerful answer for me because I haven't
Yeah,
not looked at it in that sense. But
yeah.
so that's initial response. But what I
Well,
could do though, this might be a good time to go into what the seven gateways are. Whatever.
well, before you do that,
Go
just
ahead.
what I would offer as a part of my exploration was um, that in my last book I got curious about this question of maleness and femaleness because I have male children and I have female children, and it's very obvious to me, even though I wanted to treat them and be human and not have boys just do boy things and girl, there were some inherent differences that I saw.
Yeah.
There's clearly differences in the animal kingdom between male, any animal you choose, and female, any animal of that species. And I was interested in how far back maleness and femaleness go in the evolution of life. And it turns out it goes back a billion years. It's a long time. So back into single cellular creatures before there were sex differences. They talked about female cells and reproducing into two sister cells. And then there were different, I think of the sperm and the egg, the first sperm and the egg that were different. And so what I have found over the years is both there are some significant reasons why a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the world, all the destruction and the violence, often is more associated with the male spirit or men. That not to say all men are violent, and women are all peaceful, but also the woundedness and the suicide rates and the way in which men die earlier from sickness than females as a group has something to do with both what is the inherent problems that we have that go back a long time and what the solutions may be. So, yeah, maybe you could talk about maybe not all seven of the gateways, but the ones that are the most prevalent or the ones that, you found that really speak to or maybe you can talk about all seven, whatever would help people get the sense of what these different gateways are to the world that we all are hoping for.
I think it's important to do the seven, and
Okay, go ahead then.
once I do them, you'll understand.
Okay.
So, one is those people who believe that heaven on earth is internal. The more heaven on earth in me, the more it will show up in the world. So, I do art, I do writing, I do music, whatever
Mm,
my soul will have my soul sing in the world, whatever form that takes. And or I go to therapy, I have this issue with this person, with that person, and I clean that up. So clean up the hells inside. More heaven on earth in here shows up out there. Second is, not second, but another is living a value. So there are those people who say, well, heaven on earth, you have love. My wife is joy. My friend Tim is order. Those people believe that when that particular value is lived globally, bang, heaven on earth. Then there are people who say, well, heaven on earth is about relationship with myself, with another, with others, with God. Then there are people who say, well, what about external, a suffering? How can you have heaven on earth if you've got hunger or environmental pollution or war? Let us end one of those sufferings. And there's always what I call a keystone suffering. There's always one suffering that is the one for them. Because when
Mm,
that one's removed from the arch, everything else collapses, everything
mm,
else bad.
yeah.
Then we have people who say, well, what about the institutions of the world? What is heaven on earth for law, for government, for business, for science, for media? That an institution accepts its rightful role in co-creating heaven on earth. There are people who say, what about nations? My nation is a heaven on earth nation. Wow, what is that? We have a woman in Austria who's taken on Austria as a heaven on earth nation, and she's doing stuff to forward that. And then the seventh is, this here now is heaven on earth. This moment is heaven on earth. But our belief that it's not prevents us from experiencing it.
Mm,
So those seven
yeah.
consistently come up. People usually have one, two, not all seven, but it's important to know what the seven are
Mm,
because,
nice.
right, if I have love as my issue and you have hunger and we start to fight, no, 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 no. Your job is to support me and whatever mine is, my job is to support
Mm,
you.
oh, that's wonderful. So yeah, it avoids the, the seemingly endless conflicts we have between the left and the right, this and that, and this helps recognize that if you do the thing that really brings about heaven on earth for you and your world, that's bringing it about for others.
That's it.
So that leads me to another question that you've raised, and I'd be interested in your thoughts. You talked about different countries and how people have taken on different aspects of what this means individually and maybe even different countries. And you mentioned two countries that you're very familiar with, the US and Canada, where you said you've lived in both places. And it seems to me, at least I've never lived in Canada. I've traveled a lot in Canada and I have friends in Canada. And I've lived most of my life in the US pretty consistently. But clearly, there are some different things going on, certainly in the political world of the US, and that's very different from what's going on in Canada. I wonder if you could kind of speak through the lens of, your work, your experience, where you're going and where the world is going in terms of, I think you'd probably agree that humanity as a whole is got some real difficulties. Our relationship to the planet and how we're involved with our fellow creatures is not going well. And if we don't, do the work and this new story that you're talking about and I'm talking about, humanity's in trouble. So maybe speak a little bit. I think it would be interesting from your perspective, both about the US and Canada and what you have learned, what you see, what we can learn, those of us that are, you know, more embedded here in the US or people that are other places in the world that are influenced by what's going on in the US. Maybe speak a little to that, that I think would be helpful.
Let me give my overall perspective. One
Yeah.
of the things that I see is there's a lot of turmoil on the surface of culture. And what that's doing is allowing for the deeper spiritual soul talk expression to emerge. So one of the things I do is I've put heaven on earth in something called Google Alert, which gives you a daily update on where that phrase appears. Some days, Jed, I can't even. It's too much. So I see how underneath the apparent turmoil, something new is
Mm,
clearly arising. One of the things I've also been looking at is media and how media is designed right now to have you think, no, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. There's a group in Australia called Fix the News. What they're interested in is not, bad story, bad story, bad story, bad story. Jed's cat has been missing for a week, has finally come home. He's saying, and I love this premise, there is progress and success that is occurring in addition to the turmoil. And every week I get a note, well, he sends it out to lots of people. about the progress and successes that are occurring in many, many different domains of the world. And when you start to read that week after week after week, you get an entirely different perspective on what is going on in the world. And I find that
Mhm.
very soul enriching. In terms of Canada and the US, we Canada has been, I, a lot of my friends here feel betrayed by the tariffs that have occurred. I mean, really betrayed, angry to have nothing to do with the U.S. anymore. But I mean, I know that's interim. It's having its very deep effects right now. Canada was a very feminine country in the sense that we never broke with the mother country of England, and we were collective in the sense of mining, fishing, forestry. We had to look after each other. I need to know you've got my back, and vice versa. So it is collective, socialized health care, peacekeeping, concern with the environment, very collective. Now, with the tariffs going on and the uncertainty, it's very clear that this new masculinity is arising in Canada. That's all I can. It's a soft masculinity. I think our current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is phenomenal the way he's handling things. And a lot of people are no longer going south. This summer here on Prince Edward Island, you cannot believe the amount of tourists that are here because Canadians are going east-west. They are not going south anymore. In the U.S., I know how difficult it is. My friends, because I shut the U.S., when the tariffs came in, I shut the U.S. off completely. And my wife said, "What are you, nuts? You have very deep, dear friends there." I said, "Yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right." I see the disturbance in the soul of people in the U.S. right now. But I also think, Jen, underneath this new sense of who we are is arising in the U.S. Yes, you're in trouble, but the spirit of the U.S., which is why we moved to the U.S. at the end of '89, independence, great ideas. I want to build a bridge between San Francisco and Hong Kong. Canada would say, "What are you, nuts? Impossible." The U.S. says, "Great, what color?" And that, that whole, like, you mean we can do it? Yes, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Um, yeah, that's where I am.
That's
Go for
very
it.
helpful and a good perspective, I think, for all of us. And I appreciate, and I agree with you. As a citizen of the U.S. and the people are still here. The people, and we, I think, below the surface, as you say, of whatever currently our government is doing, the people still are connected and still have ties and still want to create the more beautiful world that we all know is possible. Um,
Yep.
so I want to, we're getting towards the end of our time together. Unfortunately, we there's so much we have to discuss, and we can do more maybe at another time. But I'd like to have you maybe talk a little bit about what you are doing now, because the book's been out a while and clearly is having an impact and continues to, and you're continuing to put energy towards it. But what else are you doing now, and what are you projecting for the future? What for yourself and the work you're doing in the world?
So you're right. I continue with Heaven on Earth, and it's it's working on its own. The last year or so, I began to think, well, I don't have to push anymore the way I did initially. I can see it is working.
Yeah.
That meme of Heaven on Earth is coming in to global culture. People get it, and they're expressing it. When I look at Google Alert, like 99.99% of the references have nothing to do with me, or 100% mostly. So something is arising in the collective soul about co-creating heaven on earth as our new story. And so, yeah, so last year I was kind of thinking, so what next? What next? There is a man named Carl Jaspers, who was a psychiatrist, Swiss German psychiatrist, who looked at history, and between 800 BC and 200 BC, he noticed the following. Confucianism arose in China, Hinduism and Buddhism in India, Zoroastrianism in Persia, modern day Iran, the Hebrew prophets in Israel, and the Greek philosophers in Greece. He called that the first axial age, meaning the world turned when all of these people and these ideas came in. And then several years later, a guy wrote a book called The Second Axial Age. And that stuck in my mind. For a year, that stuck in my mind. And then about 6 months ago, I began to say, so what is the second axial age? I didn't want to read his book because the way I go to something like spirituality and work or vision or Project Heaven on Earth is I do this inquiry. What's the second axial age for you? And so that book is beginning to take shape. I'm beginning to get my arms around what are the factors involved in this new second axial age.
Super. Well, I want to hear more about that, and hopefully at another time we can. And so, as we wrap up, I will be writing something, as I said, I will, and I will put in places people can connect with your work. But for those that might, as we all know, videos and the way things spread can happen separate from anything we put in writing. So talk maybe while we're on video, and we'll talk a little bit afterwards about how people can reach you. If somebody's seen this and go, yeah, I'd like to find out more about the book or about Martin and his work, what's the best way people can connect?
Let me look with you at the book. So, the title of the book, as you said, is Project Heaven on Earth, right? But it's also, Jed, Project Heaven on Earth.
Yeah.
It's both the noun and the verb. I invite people to buy 3 copies of it. Why 3? One for you, one for somebody in your life right now who you know will love or needs this book. Who is that person? And one for somebody who's going to come into your life for whom this will be perfect. And so what I've been talking about is it will make you a heaven maker. That's the new phrase. That's the action. I am a
Mm.
heaven maker. That's available on Amazon. Also, my website, projectheavenonearth.com. All the 3 questions, the gateways, all of that's there. And you can contact me through that. So I'm inviting you to be a heaven maker. Buy the book, start asking the 3 questions, and don't try to impose your answers. Just watch the answers and watch how this lay of the land unveils itself to you. It's quite lovely and it's quite predictable.
Super. Well, I love that idea. I encourage people to follow up on that are interested. And so we will talk more. Stay on line, and I'm going to connect with you once we finish up today. But really want to thank you for taking this time to share your ideas, to listen to some of the interesting exchanges that we're having, and hopefully this will continue to allow us all to find the ways in which we can bring what we all, I think, want. All of humanity, all of life, is connected and has a desire to live and to pass on good and caring, loving spirit to everyone. So thank you for now. I look forward to connecting with you more in the future and talk to you here on the other side.